So the stage is ready. Please welcome the director. He's here to celebrate the international premiere, of course, of his beautiful film. Please welcome Michael Cristofer. Please. Good evening. And of course, we are so happy to have you back. Please welcome back on stage, and please have the beautiful award with you so we can celebrate you with the award. She is back, Jessica Lange. Please have a seat. Please, in the middle. Please have a seat, Michael. Welcome back. And welcome on stage. What an amazing film, and what a beautiful film. And I cried again, of course I did. You've played so many performers over the years. We talked about Frances this morning. You played Patsy Cline. Your role in Tootsie, of course, is an actor too. And now Lillian Hall. What draws you to playing other performers?
I don't think it's particular to other performers. I think it's particular to who that performer is, really. It's not, it doesn't have to be because they are performers, but I mean, for instance, with Frances, it was the tragedy of her life and the extreme emotional journey that she was on that drew me to that. So I'd have to say, you know, it's over time I've played different actresses, Frances Farmer, Joan Crawford, other performers, make-believe, like in Tootsie or Elsa Mars, but it's not necessarily the fact that they are performers per se, it's what is the emotional journey that person is taking.
I have to admit, I watched American Horror Story, but I looked away when it got too gruesome. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the last time I saw the two of you together was when Jessica's Fiona was killing your character.
Oh, yes, that's true.
When you...
I don't remember that.
It's true.
I asked Michael yesterday because I thought, well, I should remember what we did together, but...
I'll tell you what you did.
He told me, but I have no recollection of it.
I was sitting at a table, calmly drinking a cup of coffee, and Jessica came up behind me with an axe and planted it in my neck.
It was all make-believe.
I don't know how you could forget something like that.
So, was that the moment when you thought, let's make a very, very beautiful, intimate film about the loss of memory and the pain for everyone involved? Or I guess there must have been other moments when you decided, yes, we want to make this film together.
No, that was not the moment. Not at all. No, Jessica and I have known each other for, I think, close to 40 years. We met on another movie that...
Misfortune.
A Misfortune, a terrible movie. She was acting. I was called in to do some writing on the script, and obviously I didn't do a very good job because the movie was a disaster. But sometimes you become friends out of bad situations.
It's true.
And yeah, and I've wanted to work with her in some way, apart from being axed by her. So when this came along, it seemed like a good fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Michael, you're an amazing actor yourself. You're a writer, you're a director, and you've worked with wonderful people over the course of your career, of course. But I think, I mean, even now when I was watching the film again with those many people, you can tell the magic of what you caught on screen there. And it has to do, of course, with Jessica, and it has to do with Lily Rabe, it has to do with Kathy Bates. Those scenes are just amazing. How did you create them? I mean, when you were there, are those actors somebody basically you don't have to direct because they know what they're doing, or was it difficult to create? Please tell us.
I told this story before, but I'll tell it again. When I was very young, I met with Jose Quintero, who was the man who almost single-handedly created the off-Broadway situation in New York back in the 1950s and 60s. And he did it by directing plays with actors like George C. Scott, Colleen Dewhurst, Geraldine Page, Jason Robards. Maybe you don't know all of those names, but they were the great, great American actors. So I said to him, how do you direct actors like that? And he said, oh, my boy. He was from Panama. He was Panamanian. And he said, oh, my boy, what you do, you create a vacuum around them, and they fill it. And all you have to do is get out of the way. And it's true, but what I learned was what the director does is he creates the vacuum. He creates that space. And you do that in advance of that moment when they walk on the set. You do that by working on the script. You do that by designing the sets. You do that by working with your cinematographer, and you sort of define what you think the thing is, so that the space is very specific. The script is very specific. I mean, most of my directing, for me, because I'm a writer, most of my directing I do by putting it into the script, so the actors don't always have a choice. They have to do what's written. But you do that in advance, and then that space is defined by what you've done, and it's empty. And when you have actors like this, and frankly, all of them, Kathy Bates and Lily Rabe, and Pierce was wonderful, and the Georgia actors who were theater actors that we worked on the Cherry Orchard with, they walk in, and if you give them that freedom, they fill the space that you've defined, and that's. So I don't do much directing on the set, do I? No.
Can you
stay out of the way? You stay out of the way.
Can you describe, Jessica, what is the most fruitful or a wonderful experience for you working with a director, with a film crew? Can you describe that? When you feel like, now I can be at my best?
Well, I think a lot of it does have to do with what Michael is saying, is, for them to create the atmosphere of freedom and really, in a way, to get out of your way so that you have the time, the space to explore. And the best directors do that. Michael is also an actor. I worked with Sidney Pollack, who also was an actor. So in those cases, they understand the process. They understand what the actor needs in the preparation and in the freedom to explore what the scene is calling for. I mean, the worst directors get in your way, and they somehow stifle that energy that you're bringing to this, that you need time and space to really explore and delve into.
Yeah. And it's a courageous thing, I think, when, you know, it's courageous, I suppose, on the director's part too, but really, you know, you're asking, when you're asking an actor to do as much as, for instance, this script demanded, it's an act of courage that they come out and do that. So you want nothing to be in the way of that. That's most important, I think.
I want to ask you about a scene that touched me very deeply, and I think many of us here in the audience have experienced dementia in their families and in their surroundings. And when Lillian learns that she has dementia, and I think it is so remarkably acted, and it's so, to me it seems very real, and of course it's such a sensitive and delicate topic to talk about, and not to make a cliche of a person, you know, losing their memory. I'd just love to know how you created that scene. I mean, how much did you practice? How much did you, because it's so subtle and it's so remarkable.
I mean, I've always found with scenes like that, for me personally, when it calls for that kind of turmoil or that kind of emotion or that kind of rawness, that the best thing for me is to not prepare and to not rehearse and to not talk about it beforehand, so that when you're called to react, there is a rawness to it. There is something that sometimes even surprises the actor, you know, that it's spontaneous, and in that way I think it feels more real than something that you could, you know, I think the worst thing an actor can do is make decisions beforehand to say, I want to play the scene like this, or on this line, I'm going to do this. And then it's like, to me, that's a death knell, you know. I mean, it's just, it just brings the whole creative kind of imagination to a halt. And I've been lucky that I found a way not to work that way my whole career.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to know about the difference in theater and working for the screen. And I think it's so beautiful because this film talks about the loss of memory, and it talks about the elusiveness of a person's memories and thoughts. And at the same time, the art form, the theater, is one of the most elusive ones in the world, because it's all about creating moments that do not last in the same way as a film can. And how do you approach this aspect in your career when you play theater? How much is that in your head? Like, people take a memory home, but there's not going to be anything, you know, to hold.
Well, I just actually, about a week ago, closed a play on Broadway. We'd been running for 12 weeks, and it was a very emotionally violent play, a mother and her 2 children, and it tracks their lives through 4 decades. And it actually ends with a scene, and the playwright wrote this about her mother, herself, and her brother, a wonderful playwright by the name of Paula Vogel. And the play ends with the daughter, long after the son has died of AIDS back in the 80s, the daughter visits the mother, who is now in, like, advanced stages of dementia. And I don't know if, like, now I'm at that stage in my career. You know, you start off, you're like the ingenue, you're the leading lady, you're the romantic lead, then you're the mother, then you're the bad mother, then you're the, and now it's like the dementia stage. I mean, it's, but not to make light of this, because we've dealt with it, I think, in a very sensitive way, but it struck me that the last two projects I've done, the last play and the last film, are dealing with this. So I think for people, and in the audience, I mean, you could tell like how much these things resonated with them, and I can't tell you how many times I got letters at the theater, or people, you know, stopping me on the street or whatever, saying, I've been through that with my mother, or I've just been through that with my father. And the great thing about theater is that the audience is part of the production. The audience is part of the play. So when you're on stage and you're in the middle of a big emotional scene and you can hear people crying, or you can hear people, you know, if there's a moment of humor, or hopefully more than just one moment of but it's like a living, breathing entity, and you are fed that energy from the audience throughout the whole production. And that, to me, is what makes theater absolutely magical. Mm-hmm. Because it, you know, it's a different experience sitting and watching a film, because I look at this and, I mean, I appreciate what an amazing job Michael did of putting this film together and telling this story, but you're already, you know, several steps removed from it. Whereas when you're on stage with an audience there's a palpable exchange of energy, if that makes, I don't know if I answered your question.
You did.
Yeah.
You did.
No, but
You did.
I also think the idea of the theater works really well in the film for several reasons. And you know, when I first read the script, the opening night of the cherry orchard, in the original script, it happened in the middle of the movie. And from that point on, it was about the deterioration into dementia. And the first thing I did was, and I said I would only be involved with this if I took the opening night and put it at the end of the story. So suddenly, instead of a sort of sad story about slipping into dementia, it became about someone fighting the odds, someone struggling to maintain who they were, to maintain their identity in the face of mortality. And by doing that, suddenly the story, and surprised me, as I didn't know I was doing this, but suddenly it was a much more universal story, because something is going to happen to all of us, and no one escapes. But it's fighting those odds, it's remaining who you are, and for this character to remain who she was meant getting to that opening night of the thing. And as Jessica just said, and of course, it's ephemeral. I mean, because she gives that performance and then it's gone, and she's gone, and that's what life is like. But it's possible to have those moments of triumph in the face of mortality, and I think that's why the ephemeralness of the theater was really worked for us well in terms of the story. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jessica, you mentioned with a film, when you see the film in the movie theater, then of course you're 3 steps further, but still you've played so strong and memorable characters. Could you say that which one stayed with you the longest? Even after it was all done, but still a part stayed.
Well, there have been a couple. To begin with, the first one that really, and I swear, it was like a haunting. I felt her presence, was Frances Farmer. And I think part of that was because that was really early on for me as an actor. That was like the third movie I did. And, you know, I hadn't become adept or practiced at this thing of like letting it go at the end of the day or letting it go at the end of the production. So, and I fell, and it also has to do with the characters that you kind of fall in love with. They become like a love affair. And Frances definitely was that. I loved her somewhere very deep. So she hung around for a while. The next one I would say was probably Blanche Dubois, because you can't escape her somehow. It's just almost impossible. It's funny because I did a production in New York, and then at the end of I took my family, we all went back to our farm in Virginia, and I see pictures of me with the kids and on the farm and with Sam, and soon after the play was over, and I do look wraith-like. I look like a ghost. I look like some kind of, so I'd have to say that Blanche hung on for a while too. But the one that is most dear to me of any character I've ever played, and the one I could play for the rest of my life if I hadn't out-aged her, would be Mary Tyrone in Long Day's Journey into Night. I mean, that one is just, yeah, that one is monumental. And I've always felt with that character, no matter how many times you've played her, and I've done it 3 times now. I did a production in London, a production on stage in New York, and we've filmed it. And it feels to me like you never get to the bottom of this character. This is a bottomless well, and you could do it from now until the end of time and still discover things with that character of Mary Tyrone.
I have a very simple question at last, because we've all watched this film now, and we see Lillian, a person who so loves what she's doing and is so defined by her talent. And I just want to know if what you're doing, the both of you, and I start with you, Michael, is that what you've always wanted to do? Is that the dream? Could you achieve that, being a remarkable writer, an actor, and a director? Is that the dream job? Well,
I think the way you phrased the question, it sounded like it's done somehow.
no. I didn't mean that, no.
No, I know.
No.
I know. It sounded that way to me. So the truth is, to keep trying to do it better. I mean, I sat tonight going, oh, if I had just done, you know. But that's the, it's the impossibility. For me, it's the impossibility of saying that was perfect. This was, you know, it's just that the struggle to do it better, whether it's writing or acting or, And I've been very lucky to, because so many of those things, the writing has fed the acting. I mean, I stopped acting for about 15 years. And when I went back, I suddenly, because of the writing and some directing, then I knew what the job was. I said, oh, I get it now, I see. So yeah, I think it's, I think I'll just keep doing it until somebody stops me.
And how about you, Jessica?
You know, I never did anything else. I mean, I've only been paid for 2 things in my life. One was a waitress, and I think, you know, as time goes by, I'm probably too old to be a waitress anymore, so. But, you know, I remember as a child, growing up in small towns in northern Minnesota and I mean, I wasn't exposed to theater, or I wasn't exposed to, the only thing we had was a movie theater in town and watching old films on TV with my mother at night when I was a little girl. And I was always fascinated by actors and fascinated by acting. And I think in some way that I was gearing toward that my whole life, really, because as a child, I lived in this world of make-believe, in this world of the imagination, because of course we didn't have like all the, you know, devices and social, so it was all about the imagination. And I think when you're so deep inside your imagination, it's almost like time travel. I created stories, I created characters, I created scenes that I played by myself, like, you know, different characters with different dialogues. So when I look back on it now, I mean, at the time, I just thought that was what you did as a child. You know, you just made up stories and you lived in your imagination. But now when I look back on that, I think how fortunate I was in a way, that that's what was available to me, and how that has really fed and nourished what I chose to do then, that I chose to be an actor and to tell stories and to live in the realm of the imagination and to continue, even at this late date in my life, to make believe.
I want to thank you so much for celebrating the Great Lillian Hall, the international premiere, here with us in Munich for the first time at our festival. I cannot thank you enough. It was wonderful. And one last round of applause before we say goodbye for tonight. And tomorrow we can watch your beautiful photo exhibition, and we will watch another of your wonderful films. And now it is time to say goodbye. And thank you for tonight to
And
Michael
thank you
Cristofer
all. Thank
and
you
to
so much.
Jessica Lange. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Can I take it with you?